This morning we chanted the reflection on the four requisites. And I was thinking, when in my time before I was a monk did I think about these kinds of requisites in life and try to take care of them. And I remember when I was traveling in India, I'm not sure how I learned to sew, but the clothes I was wearing, because I was there for a while, were becoming ragged, or I needed to shorten a pair of pants I got, or whatever it was. And so I started to learn, and there was a lot of enjoyment in it, which was surprising. We're learning how to sew some clothes together and keep things patched or taken care of. And of course, most of us, we didn't have a maid or somebody cleaning up after us. We learned to take care of our living space. Unless our parents did it, they were hopefully gave us a little bit of tough love and encouraged us to clean our rooms, tidy up. So we have the sense of what to do with these requisites, how to be responsible. Of course, our relationship to food is something that is ongoing. I think whether one is a monk or a layperson, there's always a particular way that someone has some relationship with food. And usually it's not quite pure. There's always some sort of sense of what we're doing that can be based on greed or aversion. I don't like this, I don't want that. I remember when I was little, I used to, whatever I didn't like, I would take off my plate and put on my mom's plate. And she was very gracious. She often ate the things I didn't want. But these are important reflections. They're not just reflections for monks or monastics. They're incredibly important in life. And the more that we take them seriously, or when we see that we might be moving in a way that isn't really examining their use within our life in terms of restraint around using them, or remembering gratitude for how they came to us, even for non-monastics who are paying for items. There's a lot of work that goes into, for example, cultivating what's eaten, a lot of labor, and the same goes for all of the requisites. With sometimes people who are very poor who are making the clothes that we wear. And so it's just very helpful, because it might seem like, oh, why do I want to think about these material things? But how we use material things really affects our minds, and how we think about them, and not just use them, but how we think about them and bring them into our mind around where they came from, and how we can extend their use, how we should be careful with them. That really impacts the mind. And of course, one could go in a kind of neurotic way and really, try to use things in a way that's just a bit too obsessive or something. But having a very balanced view with them is quite important and helpful in our lives. So it does, in a very important way, allow us to have a natural sense of restraint with what we're using. Like, oh, maybe I don't need that. I don't need to have that extra thing or get that thing that I want. And it also allows us to see how we can care for them and extend their lives, and then that's where frugality, is really learned, and a sense of what's necessary. And so what this ultimately does is it really tames this unwholesome desire that's causing us dukkha in our lives. And so the more we can bring that forward with just thinking about the things that we wear, sometimes how many things we have. How many things do we really need to own? Do we need to have, 20 or 30 t-shirts, or maybe just 3 or 4 is okay? I remember being inspired by, whatever people think about these names, that's okay, but Steve Jobs and Barack Obama, who I believe had just 2 suits, or even 1 that they wore. And they had several of those suits, so it should be stated they didn't just have 1 suit. But they didn't have to think about what they wore. They didn't have to kind of put a lot of time into their own fashion. And I think Steve Jobs even had a much more simple way of wearing his clothes. So it's, why do we want to devote our mind to thinking about what makes us look nice and have to pour in so much of our life into our appearance? So just kind of taking from a note from Laporte's way of teaching is just to keep things neat and tidy, just basic, clean. We're careful, and we're relating to our dwelling places and what we wear, and especially the food that we eat, which is one where the these unwholesome desires can really come out, or aversions. And then just the medicine we take, just being careful what's helpful to us, what's necessary. And so these are just some reflections that we can use, just thinking about what we're doing each day. And this is something where we have so many opportunities just to keep reflecting on it, because we are wearing clothes all day long. We are eating, hopefully not all day long, but part of the day that's sustaining us. And we can really reflect on these things, the gratitude that we can have, and the carefulness we have with how we use them.